I just want to mention a little bit of how this film came to be because our filmmaker, Malik Bendjelloul, who's from Sweden, was traveling around the world and he caught wind of this story. As you can see, the search for Sugar Man for Rodriguez culminated in him coming to South Africa in 1998. And so that's the euphoria of that story. Malik didn't come across this till after that, so he started the documentary in 2006. And one of the things that was remarkable to him was that no one else had caught on to this amazing story and started to film it. So no South African documentary filmmakers thought, let's make a film about this. So he started doing that, and what's fantastic is that so much had been documented already that he was able to draw into that. And then, of course, it took a while. Documentaries do take quite a while to do. So he started in 2006. It was released in 2012, and then was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Documentary, and it won the award. And one testament to Rodriguez is of course he was invited to come to the awards and to be there, to be honored, and he refused. He said, no, thank you. This is all about the film, the documentary receiving its, due, and so he stayed home so that Bendjelloul could get, all the attention. And I thought that was really an interesting aspect, and it squares with that person that you see up on the screen, such humility with that. So that's a little bit of the background of that, and I'll line it over to Mitch to make some comments about the music.
Yeah, the music, first of all, thanks everybody for being here for the block. It was really rad. My mom's here too, I've been struggling about how to speak on this documentary for a while, because it's, to me, to be frank, I think that the documentary is heartbreaking, but the music is not. The music is just selling being connected to your neighbor, and equity and inclusion of everyone, no matter difference in belief, race, color. It doesn't matter. The music speaks, and that I think is what makes and made this album so dangerous. Where it wasn't, no one in the U.S. knew about this thing. I don't know how. They touched on it for like one sentence in the documentary at the very beginning, that they think someone just had it in their luggage and went to South Africa, and then it got out. And during the 1970, 1969, when there was this entire uprising of injustices that were happening, this record spoke to that many people and helped turn a massive social change. And so I know this sounds probably bad, but it is bad. But it's also just my opinion on the music and the power behind it, is I don't think that it was allowed to get out in the U.S. because of the drastic amount of social change that it made in South Africa. I could speak for a long time on that, but I think that's enough food for thought for right now. It's great music.
Another interesting thing about the film, and we're watching this, a digital projection of it here. But Bendjelloul, he shot all of this on 8mm film, and so we're seeing, and it's so beautiful, what he filmed. And I think it's so interesting because we're listening to this music that was recorded, on analog, and there's a reverence for that. And same with film. And one thing about film is, in the technical part of it, it has really good latitude to show, the brights darks or shadows and whatnot. And it's fascinating to me that he chose that medium to work with, and it matches the era that we're investigating through this. The other part that I find really fascinating in this is the myth. At the beginning, we get the myth of Rodriguez and what happened to him, and it's this cliffhanger that starts things off. And there's several points along the way where it reaches another cliffhanger, and the structure itself is told so well in terms of story making. You kind of forget you're watching a documentary. You just, want to find out the answers to what happened to him. And that's a real testament to documentary film. You can do that. And it's just as entertaining and commanding as watching a drama. And so I thought that was really masterful, the way that he conducted all of that.
On the same wavelength as 8mm film, I can speak about the vinyl aspect of this, where there is a massive innate human connection with something that's physical. That's why we're not protective of our digital files. I'm leaving up that to my son's generation. Like, whatever, I'm over it. Privacy's gone. Like, it doesn't matter. But with this physical medium, it's so powerful to the smell, to the touch, that how many people took that pen or that etching, and how many records did they have to physically scratch that first track out so a DJ couldn't play it? That is insane to me, but that's reality, right? Because not only is that just a file, it wasn't a file that's being played that's forgettable. It's that experience of having the record in your hand. You're now connected to that entire story of that experience and that artist's message. And that is powerful. And so with vinyl specifically, that was 2008 when this was re-released, was a really big tipping point for his career. When Light in the Attic released this record, it was huge. It was sold out right away. And that type of relationship with a message is something that is extremely important and is extremely difficult to control. And so it makes it very powerful. And that, I think, is why I'm very happy to have a copy, to play it on the program. And then to go quickly to the music part, I won't rant about this, but his sound, and the thing that confuses me from a musical aspect about Rodriguez the most is the production value that went into his recordings, if they weren't really necessarily meant to be heard, which I kind of think. I don't understand. That's the caveat, is where did this production come from? Where did this money come from? And this time and attention that was put into these recordings. How are these tapes not destroyed? How is that stuff still available? How did this all come to be as it is, where from a production aspect, I can put this record in the same category as anything Brian Wilson had produced. It's just as eclectic from an instrumentation standpoint as Beach Boys stuff. There's so many diverse music instruments. There's so many diverse forms of writing, all within one record. It's a very powerful thing. And so to have all of that combining and then go nowhere at all, to me, that is just someone pulled the plug at the last minute and said, hold, no. So I'm really torn about this documentary and about this story, because I think it's very sad and very representative of what the music industry really is, of the controlled message.
So we'll come back around to the music. And one question before we get is it's very place-based.
Yeah.
Sometimes very obvious and sometimes subtle. And that's how the chapters go. So I'd love to hear a little bit about cinematically and musically, why place mattered as this documentary unfolded.
Yeah, at the beginning, they're telling the story of how they discovered him, and they went down, by the river, and the imagery of that is just so amazing. Of course, they're telling it in story form, which, in filmmaking, that's great when people do that. But then also, you notice that, of course, there's no evidence of that. No one took a picture. There's no footage, and so I was just amazed at how he worked that into the visuals that he used, and then of course the animated sequence there to give you a sense of what that was like in that particular place in Detroit, and then of course it then dissolves from the animation that created world to evoke that to present day, the film that he shot there on location. And that happens a few times. And, there's a dreamlike quality to it, a memory type quality to it that I think is really effective and used throughout. The other thing is the aerial shots are used quite a bit over Detroit and whatnot. And I kept thinking about that. It was used quite a lot. And to me, there is a searching quality to that. There's sort of searching, looking from down high. And, Mitch, you're talking about, like, this was made and it was kind of lost, but it was, recorded so well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it begs the question as you're from that perspective up high, looking down. How many other Rodriguez are there? That have been lost, but could be found and have this kind of impact.
I did have a quick question for you regarding the animation. Quickly, I really like that, and I haven't seen that very often, with just like random animation, seemingly random, just placed in. As like a documentary maker yourself, what emotion or what is the reason for the choice of putting animation in? Is that like because of lack of footage, or is it for an emotional reaction?
Well, it's kind of both. When you don't have footage, it's a real problem, but it's also a gift as a problem because you will need to solve it somehow. And some filmmakers do that through recreations with the actual subjects or through actors and whatnot. And some turn to animation, and animation in a lot of different ways. There's a documentary about a record producer in Hollywood some years ago, and they used animation quite a lot, but it was kind of a Saturday morning cartoon, 1970s kind of look to it that fit that Hollywood 70s look. And so there are a lot of different ways to use that. And in fact, there's some documentaries that are completely animated. There was one a few years ago called Bryant. It's just fascinating. It's about a well-known Canadian animator, and they conducted the interview and whatnot, but it's all animated. Yeah.
Thank you. Carrie asked a question in regards to place, and I find that a phenomenal question in regards strictly to the music itself, because my father-in-law, who's also here, Detroit, rock and roll connoisseur, born and raised in Detroit. He's a hell of a guitar player. The music that you heard is not brought up in the same sentence as Detroit rock and roll. It's not. You'd never hear that. It's not the same thing. Not even. You can't really place it. You can't when you hear the music. I can't. I'm not saying you. Like speaking from my experience, I can't place that music. That sounds like intentional, great recording, the right microphone on the right instrument, where the engineer and the producer were in sync with one another, and the instruments were tuned right, and the humidity was correct, and the heads of the drums didn't go out of tune from song to song, And so everything was cohesive. And that takes a special stamp in time to create something that can't be placed. That's what makes something like mysterious and almost ethereal. And spiritual, I think, is the word. Omniscient, right? And that's what the message is from the music, which I find confusing, fascinating, that it cannot be put down. I don't even think that, my personal opinion, I don't think that Rodriguez sounds, as he sings, like any nationality. I can't, if I was to hear him and not see this picture, I would in no way know what that person looks like. And I think that that is also fascinating, amazing, and also from an audio standpoint, when all you have is the radio, at the time, in the 70s, not being able to see or know who that person is again, very, it's something to be aware of, in my opinion, given what the message is of what's being said. Because you're just then associating in your own head, and that's left to chance. So not putting it in place, not being able to put the person, the recorded voice in a place, I think is also very, very interesting.
So we have a question from the audience here. If you still have a question.
Well, hi. My name is Jack. I'm a recent arrival in Muskegon from Detroit.
Welcome.
And I lived through all that. The pictures are quite accurate of, well, the bottom, the unfortunate sections of Detroit. And I would really thank the filmmakers for not including the 67 riots and all that stuff. Thank goodness they didn't do that. Because this film is more like, it is concentrated on Sugar Man, on Rodriguez. And I would say, I lived through all that era, and we had vibrant black music environment going on all over the city. And a lot of garage bands in the city and in the suburbs. But for some reason, we never heard of Rodriguez. And I would say probably because he didn't push himself. And you got to have marketing and a push behind there somewhere to get the songs played on the radio and TV. Because there was a lot of rock and roll stations that would play anything, but we never heard him. And I could listen to him now. I think he's easier to listen to than Bob Dylan. So it's unfortunate, but he did choose to come back and not really push himself onto the scene. Because there's all kinds of opportunities in the large metropolitan areas to play your music and get noticed. So he was doing what he wanted, I guess. And I'm not sure, is he still living? Yeah.
Go ahead. Okay.
So, 3 or 4 machine gun style questions, take them in what order you want. So if he didn't promote, Clarence Avant knew the hell out of promotion because he had been with Motown and now he's branching off to Buddha and Sussex. And Sussex gets the royalties from South Africa, and when they put Avant on camera, he pivots like a classic politician. Oh, you want to know about money? No, you don't want to know about money. You want to know about the man and the artist. He dodges the question. So where did the money go? What did Clarence Avant do to pull this star back with instead of the other stars that he could manage, like the Supremes and everybody else who made hits in Motown? And it was called the Factory, remember? The music factory. They managed their artists, they managed the hell out of them. They wanted a certain look and style and all that. And they promoted the hell out of them. But maybe Rodriguez had the integrity to tell them to, go jump. And maybe they decided not to manage the hell out of him. So take those questions how you want to.
Well, here's what I did in my former career. I worked in the recording business in LA, in recording studios. And the thing is there are so many people that recorded albums that barely saw the light of day. And you make a good point. Why was there not a push behind that? What's the answer to that? And Avant was clearly trying to avoid having to speak to that. And it's an interesting mystery. Someone knows the answer to.
Money went somewhere. The Sussex royalties.
Yeah, money
South
definitely
Africa
went
somewhere.
Yep, absolutely. But I think it also, it's fascinating to me about Rodriguez, where he doesn't seem to care that much about that, because what I got from watching him in this is that the music was really what he cared about, and that he wanted it to sort of feed his soul, and maybe other souls might be fed by that as well. But if not, he was fine with that. And so in a way, he did this masterful album too, they're just amazing and wonderful to see. But he really didn't seem to have a whole lot of burning desire for the business itself. And yet someone made money off of that. You're absolutely right. And I don't know what to say about that part, because that may be a whole other film. Trying to figure it out.
I think it's really cool that you spoke about your time in the audio industry, and then I'm now going to go. I'm going to talk about the film and not the music. That was a good. That was planned too. But I find it also fascinating that if you were to watch the film again, the first time, other than a picture of Rodriguez, that a person of color is seen on screen, it's a picture of a dead person, a dead black person in the road. And then the only time that we see an interview with a person of color, it's a confrontation. And that's the only, and there's no uplifting music behind that conversation. There's nothing. It's silent, and it's a hard cut to that interview. We're like, oh, they actually got Clarence Avant there. Like, and I don't know Clarence Avant, I don't know his experience, but all of a sudden he's like seen as this bad guy in the film. Like he's the one villain that knows something that someone else doesn't. But I call bullshit on that. I mean, all these people knew that he was alive. All those people wearing the suits with the gold records behind them and everything, they knew he was alive. I mean, they're the ones raking in the money. I mean, I'm not going to speak anything about Clarence Avant, because I don't know him about. What I do know is that Sussex record label closed in 1975, and his unfinished album was 1973. And so there's only a 2-year period there where they're like, okay, well, we're getting out of this game. We're shutting this down quick. Like, okay, see ya, we're gone. I don't think it's an accident, and I think it's, I don't know, and I won't speak to directorial choices or production choices from film, but I do think that is an odd thing to notice. But yeah, the money has to go somewhere, and Rodriguez didn't get paid, and that's an issue. And it's not uncommon.
Definitely gives more questions than answers.
Well, in studying literature, it's really interesting to study what's left out as well as what's included. And the lack of commentary on that interview, it was just there and then moved on, was pretty powerful. Also for me, hugely powerful, was the whiteness of the audiences. Wasn't that incredible?
We noticed that.
And again, without comment, you know, it's powerful because it isn't elaborated on, but you just feel it, you know. two things that I thought were, one of them curious and the other one incredible. The curious thing is that we never hear anything about where these three daughters came from.
Huh.
There's a woman there, at least one, and they're absent. You know, she or they are absent. And I thought that was an interesting choice in telling the story. But the incredible thing was how articulate his daughters were. You know, they clearly didn't grow far from the tree. And then the really articulate bricklayer, the guy with the green eyes, who Emerson was that, what a name. But, you know, they picked very almost poetic clips of people talking about different aspects of them. And I thought the language was really powerful in those spoken clips, too.
That's not really a question.
Yeah, well, you know, that's interesting because I was reading an interview with the filmmaker, and he was talking about that interview and others, and he was referring to the people on the street in Detroit that he was interviewing as poets. And he was really drawn to that. And so it sounds like there were a lot more people that he ran into and filmed, and there's only a couple in this length that I would love to see more. And then also, I don't know about I wondered as well about the mothers related to that. And that's one of the difficult things when you have such a sprawling story you're trying to tell. There are many, many details, and that, and there are probably others that, for whatever reason, he chose to cut out. I'm sure he must have had some kind of answer to that. Yeah, so it seems like there should be a part 2 to this, you know, to get at some of these intriguing aspects that were left unsaid.
Just about the what you mentioned about the poetic language choices, I thought that was a really good, like a kudos to the director producer, where he, before making this documentary, he obviously listened to these records a lot, because this is poetry too. And so to have a flow like that, where you can only hear like X amount of time of a song, and you have to choose specific lyrics to showcase, just like you have to choose specific segments of a conversation to showcase in an interview. There's a meter, there's a timbre and a flow to that type of conversation, and when you can match the two with the medium, being music and conversation, that's powerful. And so I think that's a really good point you brought up.
So I was gonna wrap it up here. One last question?
Well, not so much a question as a comment. I was struck by the youth of the audience, supposedly in South Africa, when they had not had any obviously direct contact with him, but how was that real, or was that staged? And it's almost like the teenage girls,
Yeah.
and they had never seen the man before.
We're on the same level.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's an interesting question.
It's a great
I
question.
think this is just a guess, but I think because he has that mythic status there as the superstar that no one knew was alive, boom, there he is. It may have transcended just whether or not you liked his music, but it was just this amazing event to go and witness.
When you consider it's 5,000 audience, we've been to Cape Town, it isn't that big a place.
It's a gritty city.
Big city, and 5,000 people, that's a lot.
But if what they're saying, if the message is true, and all these households, through an accident, all these kids grew up with this record in their parents' collection. I mean, so my parents had James Taylor and the Carpenters and 38 Special. You know what I mean? Like, I'd go see 38 Special, I'm here, yeah, like, let's go party. You know, but so if that was the same type of relationship where it evoked nostalgia, and
Well, and also Harpo to carry.
It was also the background to a major change in their.
Correct.
So.
Can I say something about the nostalgic factor?
The nostalgic, and then we must wrap it up, but they'll stick around a little bit for one-on-one conversations.
The filming is just about poetic in the overall faded 8mm sepia tones, but now maybe that would appeal to the younger folks that haven't seen it in vivid color like us older folks have. It's like an artistic choice there, I guess.
Actually, a lot of what he shot, maybe what you're referring to is the archival footage that he got a hold of, that he used. And then the footage that he shot on 8mm film is all in vivid color. It was shot on color negative film.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating how beautiful that looks. Most people forget how amazing it is, when it's fresh.
sounds like it's the same between the sound of a record and the sound of a WAV file. There's no beat in the original.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the audience. Thank you, John.